We're going to be talking today about lead generation and setting appointments and all that kind of stuff. So I'm excited to have you guys here. So I talked on Thursday, the first part of this, but I think Shanna's the only one. She's online, and I think she's the only one that was here. So I may spend a little bit more of the time on the review than what I typically would have for today, just as I go through some of this. But anyway, thanks for being here. And what we're going to do is go through and talk about setting appointments and all that. And I promise you that I'm going to give you some good information that'll help you do better in your prospecting. So just as a reminder, though, of what your job is. So this is where I want to start with. Your job is four things, okay? Is to prospect, follow up, because and we'll talk more about this today, but to follow up, because you're not always going to set an appointment on the first phone call, which would be nice if we could get an appointment every time on our first call, but it's just typically not always going to happen. So your job is to prospect, then follow up. Then number 3 is to set an appointment. And so keep in mind that as you're making your prospecting calls, as you're doing your lead follow-up calls, the purpose of doing the lead follow-up and the purpose of doing prospecting is to what? Set an appointment, okay? And then after we've set the appointment, then we're going to go out and present to them. So that's the fourth part of your job. Now, I talked about this on Thursday of like a little bit of just kind of keeping in mind that as part of this, nobody told you that's what your job was. Well, maybe Isaac probably did get told this before he came into real estate. None of the rest of us were told when we came into real estate, this is what your job is. I don't know. Did your dad tell you that? Yeah, I was going to say most of us came into it thinking our job was to go out and meet with people and get them to sign papers and go show houses, that kind of stuff. But that's not really what your job is. This is really what your job is. And so don't resist doing your job, because that's unfortunately, or fortunately, however you want to look at it, what you signed up for when you came into real estate is to prospect, follow up, set appointments, and then go out and present to people. Once we've presented and they agree and sign the contract, that's the rest of it's easy. This is the hard part of our job. And when I say that, the hard part of it being it's hard because we resist doing it. And so just know that's what you signed up for, okay? So as we go through and we talk about this, keep that in mind. This is what your job really is, okay? Now from there, then on Thursday, I went through, and again, like I said, I'm just going to do a quick refresher on this, but it breaks down your journey to becoming successful in real estate is going to look something like this, okay? And this breaks down into 4 areas. The first area being the activities phase, which the activities phase is where where most people are right after they get their real estate license, is stuck in this activities phase. Is because we went to real estate school. They didn't teach us how to sell real estate in real estate school, meaning they didn't teach you any of this stuff in real estate school. Like, correct me if I'm wrong. Did anybody get taught how to prospect, how to follow up, how to set appointments or present? No. What did they teach you?
How to stay out of jail.
Yeah, basically how to pass the test and what the laws were, right? That's really, so because of that, we get stuck in this activities phase. We get stuck in this phase of, well, I don't know if I dare get on the phone and make some phone calls to people yet, because what if they ask me a question and I don't know how to do it? What if they ask me to go write an offer? What if they want me to come out and list their house? So because of that, we get stuck in this, well, I should learn how to do that first. And so remember, we want to get you out of this phase and into what we talked about next, which was the contacts phase. In the contacts phase is where we are then our focus. So that was the first thing. The first piece of this is focus, okay? Is in the contacts phase, your focus is on getting a certain number of contacts. And we chant through every day in Morning Ascent, this 12 steps to the summit of success. And how many contacts do we say you should do?
30.
Yeah, minimum 30 contacts a day, right? So that's where this next phase is. The next phase after that is what we call the appointments phase. Okay. And I shared a story with you guys that were here on Thursday about how I went from making 50 contacts a day over to this phase where it was set one new appointment every day. And my commitment was I would not go home until I set an appointment every day. Now, then the last phase is what we call the transactions phase. This is where you really make a lot of money. And in this one, you keep one new appointment every day. Okay, so this one is we're setting a new appointment. This is what we're going to be talking about today, is this appointment space. How do I get appointments? How do I set appointments? So any questions on any of this? I know I'm going real fast on it. Anybody like, what the hell are you talking about? No, we're all good. All right. So then the next thing we talked about, so your focus. So as we go through and talk about this today, here's what I want to make sure you guys remember. Your focus every day in prospecting should be to do what? Good. Set an appointment.
Keep it.
For right now, that's the next phase. For right now, just your objective every single day is I need to set one new appointment, and one new appointment means somebody I've never met with before. Okay, so the rest of this class is how do we do that? So how do I do it? Well, your first thing is you have to have the focus on doing it. I am amazed at how many times when I go listen to an agent make phone calls, they will afterwards, they'll have a really good call. And at the end of the call, I'll say, you didn't even ask for an appointment. Oh, I got so involved in the conversation, I forgot. Well, what that tells me that they don't have that as their focus. So your number one focus every single day has got to be around, I have got to set an appointment today. Okay. So when I went from this of making 50 contacts a day to I won't go home until I set a new appointment. This line here is, think of this one. I probably should have done it in green. This line here is basically the money you're going to make. And you'll notice what happens in this phase. You make a lot more money. You make a ton more money. See, too many agents get stuck in this. I'm going to make this many contacts. And then what happens is they get stuck in making contacts. And at the end of the day, they go home and go, I made 50 contacts, and they feel really good about it. That's what happened to me. I would go home and feel really good that I had made 50 contacts during the day, but I really wasn't making the money. It was as soon as I went into this phase where I said, okay, I will not go home until I set an appointment. And when you commit to that, when you will commit to, I will not go home until I set an appointment, it is amazing how all of a sudden things change. Like all of a sudden stuff around you, all of a sudden almost like comes to you. I don't know if that makes sense what I'm saying, but when you have that as your intention of I will set an appointment or I won't go home, all of a sudden it's amazing how easy it is to set an appointment. Okay? Now, so the second piece of this then, and again, I'm just doing this quick refresher from what we talked about Thursday, and then we'll jump into what we're going to do today, is you have to then connect with the people. I've got to get a connection. So I've got to connect with them. And how do we do that? The way we're going to connect is first, we're going to ask a question. Oops, that marker's not working. First, what I'm going to do is ask them a question. So ask a question. After I've asked the question, they're going to respond. When they respond, I then need to repeat and affirm. Okay. People want to be validated. Every single one of us wants to be right. And so if you will make people right, they will then, that will create this connection to where they feel like there's some rapport between you and them. Okay. So I'm going to ask a question. I'm going to repeat back what they said. Now, when I say that, we want to repeat back. You don't need to say every single thing they said, but you want to repeat either basically summarizing what they said or the last 3 to 5 words that they said. And then you want to affirm that by saying, oh, that's great. That's exciting. That's fantastic. Something like that. You want to just be, oh, really? That's very interesting. Whatever it is, but we got to affirm it back to them. Okay. Once we have done that, Then we'll ask another question, repeat and affirm, ask another question, repeat and affirm. And then the other piece of this in terms of the connection is we want to throw in some empathy as well. Empathy is, if I were you, I would feel the same way too. So if I were you, I would feel that way too, especially if you are calling expireds or for sale by owners and they are annoyed that you're calling, you want to jump in and do this. Hey, it seems like, or you want to say it sounds like, something like that. Seems like, or it sounds like you've gotten calls from a ton of different agents. And they're going to go, yeah, started at 6:45 this morning. My phone started ringing and people were calling me. Wow, if I were you, I would be frustrated that people are calling me that early in the morning. It's amazing how when you throw this in with them, if I were you, I would be feeling that same way too. It gets them on your side. All of a sudden, they like what you have to say and are willing to listen. So it creates this connection. Okay. Then number three. Number three is after we've created the connection, is the next thing I've got to do is create value. / I like to say, make them curious. Okay. You've either got to create some type of value for the person on the phone or at the door, whatever it is you're doing. Or you can think of it as you have to make them curious. Here's the thing. Remember, what are we doing all this for?
Set an appointment.
Okay, good. Yeah, I'm going to keep testing you on that. Like, what's your job? Set appointments. Okay. So if you will create value or people are curious of what you have to say, they'll meet with you. In fact, I would say for every single phone call you make or a door knock that you do, if you do not get an appointment, it is because of one of three things. And we'll talk about the third one in a minute. But you either didn't connect with them, or you didn't create value, or they weren't curious, or the fourth one, or the third thing on here, which is number 4 here, we'll talk about is close. Okay. But we'll get to that in a second. You have to create value. So how do you create value? Or make them curious, either one. It's Jackson, right?
Yeah, Jackson. I kind of say like giving them something that they may feel like emotional towards, like needs and wants. Like, and you may need more space in your house for your kids, you know, and they're willing to pay more for that. So I'd say something like that, like
Okay.
use that as like a value point.
Okay, good. I like it. I saw another hand too.
So I think figuring out something they need, or like Jackson said, want, they don't have right now. Kind of like, I think it all kind of goes back to kind of the empathy part, and understanding, okay, you know, what's in our conversation we've had, you know, what's something that they keep bringing up, or something that they keep kind of going back to, or something I don't necessarily have to lead them to, but was something that they keep, you know, going back to. So understanding that is kind of like,
Okay, good. I like it.
I think providing a resource that they don't have access to creates that value. Like, I have, you know, property that's, you know, that's not on the market yet, that you might be interested in.
Perfect. Good, good. So in the case of a buyer, what Justin's saying, which I think is good, is if you're talking to somebody on the phone that's a potential buyer, of saying to them, hey, I have access to properties before they hit the market. Well, see, they don't have access to that. See, it used to be when I got my license long time ago, in the mid to late 90s. Back then, people couldn't get on. I mean, there was no website for somebody to go jump on and look for properties. The only way people found them is like if they were walking out of the Smith's grocery store over here, there was a rack with magazines in it that had houses in it that agents would pay to put their house in. So, and the agents would never put the address of the house. So you could see a picture of the outside of the house. You could see bedrooms, baths, all that kind of stuff. And like the way we as an industry looked at it is like, if we protect that, if we don't give you the address, then you'll call us up on the phone. And then once we got them on the phone, we could try to get an appointment, which worked pretty well. Then comes around 2000, the year 2000-ish. And all of a sudden now we've got internet websites and people are putting houses on there. Well, at first, what happened was we didn't put the addresses on there because really we were looking at it from the standpoint of, well, it's no different than the magazine that would be at the grocery store. We'll put the pictures of the houses on the internet, but we're not going to put the address so that people have to call us, which still worked. Well, then what happened though is that other companies started saying, well, we want people to come to our website. So we're going to put the address of the property so that people will come and use our website. Well, that then created that everybody had to put the address, which so now all of a sudden we've lost our advantage. I don't know what you want to call it, but think of it that way, is the whole purpose of a magazine in the beginning without an address was to get people to be curious as a way for them to want to call and talk to us. Well, now the internet has pretty much everything on there. It's got the address, it's got the price, it's got everything. So what do we have to do then to create value or make them curious? Is it's really now back, it's on us. We've got to be able to be the ones to do that. So how do we do it? Well, so I'll just give you some ideas. One would be what Justin said, which is telling people when you get them on the phone, I have access to properties before they hit the market. And here's the thing, our company is large enough that that is true. You are going to hear agents throughout the company talking about, hey, I got this person who's going to be selling their house and here's the information on it. Da, da, da. Like, we want to use that to our advantage because of the size of our company, of who we are, is I have access to properties before they hit the market. The other thing is we've got a number of agents in this office that will rehab properties. So they'll buy properties, fix them up, and then turn around and sell them. Well, during that time frame, we have access to those. We can find out about them. So I want to be real clear. We're not lying by saying I have access to properties before they hit the market. We do. If you'll just network with other agents, you're going to hear about and know about properties before they hit the market. Well, that creates some value for the people. So good. Okay. What about if I'm working for sale by owner and expired? Well, on those ones, we want to use what we call sound bites. Okay. We want to use sound bites, and sound bites are going to be like a 10 to a 20 or 30-second commercial. Okay. So a sound bite is a commercial. So if I'm calling expired listings or for sale by owners, and I'm asking now, so remember, this whole thing starts up here with, I got to start by asking them a question. So I asked, let's talk about for sale by owner for a second. I asked the for sale by owner. So why did you decide to sell your home by owner rather than using an agent? Well, they're typically going to say what? What's the reason? They wanted to save the commission. Okay. So now we can use this empathy. Now we can say, well, hey, well, if I were you, I would feel the exact same way. I would want to save the commission too. Now I'm going to show you guys some stuff here in just a minute, some reports that the National Association of Realtors puts out. I'll show it to you in a minute that actually shows that selling their house for sale by owner, on average, they end up with less money than if they used an agent. So, and I'm going to show you guys that so that you understand that when you're talking to them and you're saying, hey, if I were you, I would feel the exact same way too. But let me tell you about this other. So here's where now we kick into a soundbite. Let me tell you about this client that we helped recently. Now, here's the key thing. If you're new, which most of you guys are, if you're new, you don't have the, let me tell you about this client I worked with. And so until you do get that, you're going to use, let me tell you about this client that we helped. And you're going to rely on and use experiences from other people within the company. So you're going to say we instead of I, and the we being the company. Does that make sense? Okay. So you want to come up with some sound bites. Find some scenarios, situations where somebody listed their house for sale that by owner, and then they ended up having whatever. So let me give you an example of this on a soundbite. So I actually this was years ago, but I was not feeling good, so I couldn't sleep. I'm up at night. I turn on the TV just to kind of see, okay, what's on TV that I can watch. Flipping through the channels, and I come across this one that was about how to buy real estate. And because I'm an agent, I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Let's hear what they have to say. So I'm listening. And this was one of those sign up to be in our program, and we'll help you buy properties for cheap kind of a thing. one of the things that they did or that they talked about on this program was one of the ways that you get a good deal on a property is you go and find it for sale by owner and you just write them an offer for whatever they're asking. Just any price, whatever they're asking for, write the offer. And then what they said on this program was what will happen is this for sale by owner will then go out and start making whatever other plans they were going to make, meaning like buying a new house or whatever. So they'll go get a new house under contract that they're going to be buying. And then in this program, they said, what you do is you go back to the for sale by owner after your inspection, which they said, give yourself like 3 weeks for inspection, give yourself a really long time. And then go back at the end of the inspection and tell them all the stuff that is wrong with the property. Now, for you guys that are new and haven't seen a home inspection report. Well, so Justin, Aubrey, if you were a home buyer, first time home buyer, and you get this home inspection report, what does it typically look like to a buyer at first?
It's a horror story. There's 700 things. Literally.
Yeah, like you open it up and you start looking through it and like 700. I like that. There's 700 things that are wrong. Like it almost looks like this is not a safe house. You should not live here. Well, so what they said in this program is take that report and sit down and be like, look at all these problems. And then tell the seller, this is what all we're going to have to do. Now, the idea, and remember, I'm not telling you this is like, I'm not recommending this. This is just what some people do. And so what they said is then you sit down and go through all of those things and then use when you really negotiate the price and get the seller to come down significantly on the price. So the idea of this is talking to the seller a little bit about some of those things of, hey, here's some of the stuff as a for sale by owner that you need to watch out for. Here's some of the things that we have seen take place. Here's some of the clients I've helped in the past is and then you're going to give them these scenarios. Well, what happened then is I'm sitting there watching this program and they're going through and saying that. And then what they said is find out for sure to make sure that for sale by owner has somewhere else they're having to go to. And then you can basically get a huge reduction on the price because they've now made commitments that they're like, oh, well, we just have to do it kind of thing. Like that's the horror story type of stuff that happens within for sale by owners. Now, here's why. How much does it cost for a buyer to use a real estate agent? Essentially nothing. So why would somebody not? So stop and think about it for a minute. If you're a for sale by owner, you're doing it for what reason? Save the commission. But you've got a buyer who shows up and if they get an agent, the agent's going to be expected to pay the commission. So first off, most of the time, a for sale by owner is already willing to pay a buyer's agent. So they're willing to pay 3%. So they're really trying to save only 3%. So you really only have to overcome this hurdle of 3%. In fact, think of it this way when I say hurdle. Think of it as we've got 3 hurdles here, okay? And if you're running, the first hurdle you've got to jump in terms of you setting appointments with people is, do they want to buy or sell? Like that's the first hurdle you're getting over in your prospect is, do the people want to buy or sell? The second hurdle is, will they use an agent? Okay, that's the next hurdle I've got to overcome. And then the last one is that agent going to be you? So think of it as when you're prospecting, you've got to overcome these 3 hurdles. Well, with the for sale by owner, have we already overcome this hurdle? We know they want to sell. So the next hurdle is we got to overcome this, like, will they use an agent to do it? And then finally, is that going to be you as the agent that they're going to use? Okay. All right. Now, so we got to use some sound bites to overcome some of these things with buyers, or excuse me, with the for sale by owners or the expired. Now think about an expired firm. Do they want to sell?
Yes.
Were they willing to use an agent?
Yes.
So the only really with an expired listing, the advantage to them is you just got to get it to be you. Because we already know they wanted to sell. They were okay with using an agent. We just got to get it to be us. And the way we're going to do that is through these sound bites and with us creating value. It's it's using some of the things that you'll learn in role play of, like, for example, of, have you considered, so now watch this, if I'm a for sale by owner or an expired, and I'm talking and I want to create some value or make them curious, have you considered how you might use points as a way to leverage your offer? What are they going to say to that?
What does that mean?
Yeah, which if they said to you, what does that mean? What are they telling you?
That you got a shoe in the door.
They're curious.
Yeah, they're curious. And now I can then go to the next piece of this, which is to close and ask for an appointment. So first thing I would ask for you guys to do, after every contact you make in your prospecting, you should stop and ask, did I connect? And part of the did you connect is, were they willing to talk to you? Were they actually talking to you, or were they just trying to get you off the phone? If they were trying to get you off the phone, you didn't connect. If they're talking to you, you connected. So then the next piece to ask yourself is, did I create value? Or make them curious. How did I do it? What did I say or what did I do that created value or made them curious? And if you didn't, then you got to come up with something else. Okay. All right. Number 4. Then is we have to close. Yeah, go ahead.
Really quick, as far as, I struggle with this, creating value for people who are just completely just not at all interested, like, well, I'm not gonna demand, 50 doors. And I'll talk to maybe, I'll talk to like 15, 20 people, like, good amount of people on my class. And consider selling your home, and consider buying a new home. And they'll say, no, interest rates are terrible, I'm not gonna do it. And then it's kind of like that wall I put in front of them, it's, how can how could I create value in that situation? It's probably, I don't know, something you get into later, but.
So, yeah, no, it's a great question. So here's the thing to keep in mind is that, and I'm trying to think of how I want it, because I got like 3 different directions I could go to answer that. So the first thing I would say is one of the mantras that I use now, and let me clarify it before I say it. What I'm about to say, you're going to hear me say buyer, but keep in mind that a seller, somebody who's selling their house, is buying your services. So even though I'm saying buyer, they still are a seller, a for sale by owner or an expired is still a buyer of your services. Okay. And so one of the things that how I would answer that is by saying this: buyers who buy, and buyers who don't buy, don't buy. So how do you know the difference between the ones who buy and the ones who don't buy is by the results. Okay. Now I know that's a little confusing, but here's what I'm saying is you're trying to, well, let me come back to this. You're trying to find the people who really need to buy or sell. And if they don't need to buy or sell, then you're not going to overcome that, what you're saying. Like if I have 0 interest in buying or selling, now I am going to tell you a story though, that I'll come back to this in just a little while of how this works, because part of what you're saying actually is tied into what we're going to talk about today. Okay. It's just, I'm going to come back to it. Is that all right?
That's perfect.
So, but part of it is keep in mind that part of what we're looking for is the people who really want to buy or sell. And the way we figure that out is through asking questions and listening to their response. But keep in mind that if there's no connection here, people will lie to get off the phone. Even like you will have a for sale by owner and expired listing tell you, oh, we've actually already got an agent we're going to list our house with. Because if they can get you off the phone, they'll do that. But if there's a connection to where they'll talk to you and you can figure out, is there really a need for them to buy or sell? That's when then I got to get back to this. So I don't know if that answers enough of the.
Yeah,
Okay, so I'm going to come back to it. And if it doesn't, then tell me.
Yeah, that's fine.
Sound good? All right, so now close. There are only 5 ways in the English language that you can ask for an appointment. Okay, and this is what they are. What time? Which time? How soon? When? And where? Those are the only ways in the English language you can ask for an appointment. If you say anything else, you're not asking for an appointment. Now, There are versions of this that, meaning you'll hear me say when I'm prospecting, you'll hear me say, what works better, afternoons or evenings for you? Which is really just, yeah, like so you don't have to say it exact. I mean, I could say which time works better for you, afternoons or evenings. But if you just say it as, hey, what works better, afternoons or evenings? You're asking which time. Does that make sense? Okay, but now let me show you though what some agents do and how some agents go about doing it that is not asking for an appointment. Okay, if I said, so we're going to have a discussion for a minute here just on language. Okay, we're going to talk about language and how our language plays into things. If I were to say, can we get together? Now, can we get together is not asking for an appointment. Okay. What is can we get together? Let's analyze for a minute the actual words. Can we get together? What is that really asking? Oh, hang on. Before you answer, I just realized for you guys on Zoom, make sure you throw your name in the chat box if you would, just so that I have a record of who is in class. So if you'll put first and last name in there, I would appreciate it. Okay. Okay, so if I said to somebody, can we get together? What is that question really asking? Like, look at the actual literal words and tell me what that really is asking. Aubrey?
It's kind of like, can I use the bathroom? My teacher's like, I don't know, can you?
Right, which so you said it.
Ability.
Yeah. So when you ask somebody, can we get together? You're asking them if it's possible.
Yeah.
And so you guys tell me, is it possible for them to get together with you? Well, but is it possible?
Yeah.
It is possible. So why would we ever say, can we get together? Because we already know it's possible. Asking, can we get together is asking about possibilities. And we already know it's possible. The only question is what?
When?
Yeah, when are we going to do it? See, notice how this works. You would never call up a friend that you had already decided to go and do something with and say, can we go and do this? They'd be like, well, no, we already decided we weren't. You would only just call and say, so when are we going to go? Right? Same thing with this. You want to approach your prospecting from this standpoint. Now I'm going to give you guys a perfect example of this in a minute. So hold tight and I'll come back to it. But can we get together is not asking for an appointment. It's asking if it's possible to get together. And we already know it's possible. So take that out. How about this one? Would you like to get together?
It implements a no. They can right away.
Well, because would they like it? They don't know if they would like it or not. So it's hard to say, would you like to get together? Well, I don't know. Okay. How about this one? Why don't we get together?
I'll give you 100 reasons.
Yes. Now, well, watch. In fact, let me show you what happens with this one. Ron, why don't you give me some money?
Because I don't know you.
Okay. Shane, why don't you give me some money?
How many money?
Okay. Isaac, why don't you give me some money?
Because I don't want to.
Okay. Jackson, why don't you give me some money?
I agree with that.
Okay. Aubrey, why don't you give me some money?
I don't know.
Okay. How much money did I just get? Now, why? Why did I not get any money?
You didn't do your best last time.
I asked you why you weren't going to give it to me. And so then every one of you told me the reason you weren't going to give it to me. See, I got no money from that. Guess what happens when you say to somebody, Urbana, why don't we get together?
Can, but
I see.
I'm busy.
Yeah.
He's like, and sure, he's like.
Yeah. If I say, why don't we get together? They're going to tell me the reason we're not going to get together.
Mhm.
Now, the reason this is because of this. Okay. Now, don't let me trick you. Okay. But I'm going to trick you. Okay. Now, same for you guys on Zoom. I want you to participate unless you've heard me do this before. If you've heard me do it before, don't participate. Okay. So don't ruin it for everybody else. But I'm going to ask you a question and I want you guys to answer the question and then we'll talk about it. Okay. If I wanted to know what was going on a mile down the road, should I ask a giraffe or a turtle? And I want to hear from everybody, including you guys on Zoom. Throw it in the chat box or unmute. Either way, I'll turn the sound up if they unmute so we can hear them. But either unmute or throw it in the chat box. You guys hear. If I wanted to know what's going on a mile down the road, should I ask a giraffe or a turtle?
I don't know the answer.
Okay, then don't participate?
I'd say turtle maybe.
Okay,
I
why?
mean, cause I feel like it's a trick question, so I'm gonna go with. the
Okay,
turtle.
good. Aubrey?
I would ask. Human that.
That's
miles away. I don't know.
Okay,
I would probably ask somebody.
okay,
I go find out for myself.
okay, you go find out, but if you, okay,
Only options are turtle and giraffe.
that's, well, that's what I gave you as the options, would you ask a giraffe or a turtle?
If I had to pick, I'd say giraffe. but-
Okay.
I-
Okay,
I think giraffe.
okay, let's see what they got on the. Ally said neither, some of you guys are smart, so but everybody else said giraffe. Okay, so now, here's the thing, so Aubrey was right, it was a trick question. The true answer is, and which Isaac said too, I'll go find out for myself, but if you ask a giraffe or a turtle, what's gonna happen?
Well, you kind of talk to them.
Right, but notice though, that here's the thing, the way that your brain works is like a computer. It is going to respond according to the information given. Now, probably if I wouldn't have said I'm gonna trick you, you probably would have fallen for it. Yeah, you would have fallen for it if I didn't say I'm gonna trick you. If I would have just said, hey, if I want to know what's going on a mile down the road, should I ask a giraffe or a turtle? You all would have said giraffe, unless you thought I was trying to trick you, then you would have said a turtle. And I always think it's funny when I say why the turtle, and they say, well, because they move slowly. And so they would have noticed what's going on. And I'm like, okay, yeah, and by the time they were a mile down the road, it probably's changed too, right? But here's the point. Your brain works like a computer. The people you're calling on the phone, that you're knocking on their door, their brain works like a computer. And if you will say to them, hey, so which time works better, afternoon or evening? That's the one I actually like to use, is what works better for you, afternoon or evening? Because it's that same concept. You're giving them then a choice. Now, I'm not saying they're automatically going to say choose one or the other. They still may say, well, we're not ready to get together or whatever. So now let me tell you a quick story on that. So I was teaching this class. This was probably maybe 10 years ago. I was teaching this class and I had this lady sitting in the class and she said, well, Russ, I have to disagree, which by the way, if you guys want to disagree, like disagree. And tell me, like, this is one of those things, if you come to any of my classes and you just listen and then just walk out and we're like, I agreed with everything Russ said, then that's great. But if you come in here and you don't agree and you don't say, I don't agree, or I don't understand, and you leave, you lose. Just so you know, you lose. So I'm okay with being challenged. So she did. She raised her hand and she goes, I say, can we get together all the time? And I get plenty of appointments. Now, let me explain why that potentially works, okay? Is if you have connected with the person and you've created enough value, you could say, can we get together? And they'll probably say yes, if you've done these two things, okay? So I told her, I said, look, and here's the thing I would say for all of you guys. In fact, I even actually said this morning, Justin heard me say this. If what you're doing is working, you don't need to change. Don't change. Keep doing what you're doing. And that's what I told her. I said, if you're saying, can we get together, and you're doing enough business that you're happy with, then don't change. Keep doing it. What I'm teaching you guys on, if you're not getting the results you want, then you got to stop and analyze and get back to looking at, well, what are the things that I should be doing that I'm not doing, and should I change those to be able to change the result? Because the only way you change the result, which we talked about this on Thursday, and Urbano said, is you got to change the approach. You have to change the approach if you want to change the result. Well, so I said to her, hey, if you're saying, can we get together, and you're getting appointments and you're happy with it, then don't change. By all means, keep doing it. Now, after the class was over though, I went and jumped on our system at the office to see how many closings she had in the last year. Guess how many she had in the last year? It was more than 0. 2. And I was like, seems like it's working great. Like, but here's the thing, if you only want 2 closings a year, then keep saying, can we get together? But if you want more than that, you probably got to change what you're saying in order to get more appointments. Does that make sense? Okay, any questions on this? Because when you're prospecting, make sure when it's time to ask for the appointment that you are saying either what time, which time, how soon, when, or where. Okay, all right, now with that, yes, go ahead.
So is my office or your house better? Is that a where question or is that a different?
That would be aware, yeah.
Okay.
Where would you like to meet at? Would at the office or at your house? And then if they say, well, let's meet at
At Rick's place?
Rick's place, no,
Why not?
they will not say that. Okay, all right, so now, I'm gonna go now into part of what Aubrey was asking. So I want to go into the next piece of this. So the next part of our, do you have a question?
No.
Okay, so I was like, okay. The next piece of this is, so keep in mind, we're gonna get into some specifics today, but keep in mind, when you're prospecting, if you will do these 4 things, you will set appointments. You will set appointments. One is just having the focus on, my objective is to get an appointment. Next, I've got to connect with them. And the way I'm going to do it is through asking questions, repeating and affirming, using empathy. Then I got to create some type of value. I'm typically going to do that through some type of sound bites. So let me tell you about somebody else who was in the exact same situation you are, and this is what we did to help them. They ended up walking away with a ton more money than if they had tried to do it on their own or whatever. So I'm going to use these sound bites. And then after I've done that, and I know I've made them curious or I've created value, then I'm going to close. What time would be best for you? When can we get together? How soon can we get together? I'm going to use one of those. Okay. Now, here's the thing though, and I already mentioned this earlier. So we're going to go to the next piece of this. Your job is to prospect, but notice the second piece of your job is to follow up. Okay. Now, why would we need to do follow-up, lead follow-up? Why would there ever be a purpose of follow-up?
Because relationships need to be maintained. They need, like a plant, they need to be kept up.
Okay, good. I like it. What else?
So you don't lose a potential client, they might go with someone else if you're not reaching out to them.
Okay, I like it.
If there isn't follow-up, then the deal's dead. There's no next step.
Okay, good. So now, but here's part of where I guess I'm going is if I got on the phone, if we could just skip the follow-up part and go from prospect and I set an appointment every single phone call, then I wouldn't need follow-up. That meaning, yes, you're still going to meet with the person to present to them, but part of why this is part of one of your jobs, and in fact, I would say a significant part of your job is going to be lead follow-up, meaning most of the time, you're going to end up having to call people more than once to get the appointment. Okay, that's why we have lead follow-up here as part of your job. So here's the next piece of this. When you prospect, I want you to be prospecting on 2 parallel tracks. Okay, what that means is this. You should be prospecting with a primary objective and then a secondary objective. Okay, and we're going to talk briefly about the secondary objective today, but today's mostly about the primary objective. In the class that I teach on working your sphere of influence, I'm going to teach you the follow-up part of it, the secondary objective. Okay, but just keep in mind your primary objective is to set an appointment. Okay, so think of it this way. When I'm prospecting, I want to be looking for the now business. So my purpose of prospecting is going to be my primary objective is to find the people who are ready to buy or sell now. That's my primary objective. And the way I'm going to deal with those people is by setting an appointment. Okay. Now, to make this make sense, my focus is on setting an appointment. I get on the phone with somebody, I ask them questions, I repeat and affirm, I use some empathy, I'm getting a connection. I then use that fact that they're willing to talk to me to create some value or to make them curious. Once I have created the value and made them curious, I'm going to now ask for an appointment. Not everybody is going to say yes. I wish they would, but not everybody's going to say yes. So if I don't get an appointment, this is where I want to look at it as this is I'm prospecting on 2 parallel tracks. I'm looking for the now business. My primary objective is to find an appointment. My secondary objective then is I'm going to get some leads that I could then follow up with. Okay. So my primary objective is to set an appointment. That's my primary objective. The first thing I'm trying to do every time I get somebody on the phone is set an appointment. Okay. But if I can't, and keeping in mind that a lot of times you won't, in fact, one of our top agents here, his name's Cody Emery. And you may or may not have heard his name, know who he is, but he is a very successful agent here, works a lot of for sale by owner and expired listings. But I was talking to him one day and he mentioned that he had just listed this for sale by owner. And in talking to him, he said he had to call that for sale by owner 33 times. He talked to them on the phone 33 times before they said yes. See, that's the idea of this. Keep in mind that the way we want to approach it, and so here's how I like to think about it, and it's how I want you guys to think about it. When you're prospecting, my primary objective is to set an appointment. I think you guys got that. Like we've talked about it enough that you get that part. But not everybody is going to give you a yes, even though, and part of it could be that, yeah, we want to sell, but we've got a family party or something that they're doing for Christmas that, or we're going out of town until after Christmas or whatever. They are going to say, we can't do it until spring for some reason. Well, so what do? Do you just hang up and move on? No, instead, we want to say, great. And in fact, so if you're not saying this in your prospecting calls, you need to add it. I work with my clients at their pace. Like if you're not using that, start using it and watch how, as soon as you feel like somebody feels like you're pushing or you're being too pushy, all you got to say is, I work with my clients at their pace, and it's amazing how all of a sudden they drop their guard and they're like, oh, okay, good. And then now you can then talk to them and then you can ask for an appointment. Okay. So we want to prospect on two parallel tracks. Here's the other way of thinking of it. I want you to think about it this way is what, in fact, actually, you guys tell me, what is the difference between a hunter and a farmer? What's the difference between a hunter and a farmer?
Farmer sits back patiently while the hunter is taking action.
Okay, good. I like that. Yeah, think of it that way is the hunter is going out for, and forgive me for the words I'm going to use, but going out for the kill. Like the hunter's going out, I'm going to get food today. What's a farmer doing? He's planting the seed, he's going out pulling the weeds, and he's doing all that stuff, right? So here's what I'm saying with this. We want to start every bit of our prospecting as the hunter. Like I want to start the call as I'm here to get an appointment so that I can go meet with the person. That's what I mean by a primary and a secondary. But the moment I can tell they're not going to meet with me, I'm not going to be able to set an appointment, that's when I kick into being the farmer. The way I kick into being the farmer is saying, I work with my clients at their pace. I'm not going to push you to do something you don't want to do. Now, here's the interesting thing. The moment you do that, you could then go to this and say, so when can we get together and talk more about what you're wanting to accomplish? And guess what they say?
Probably a time.
Yeah, they'll give you a time. It's funny how as soon as you go from I'm the hunter to, oh, I'm just the farmer. I'm here to plant some seeds and pull some weeds and water it and all that kind of stuff. But you can all of a sudden say, but which time would be better for us to get together and talk about more about what you're wanting to accomplish? Now, here's what I found. This is where this is counterintuitive. You guys understand when I say counterintuitive? You understand what I mean? Okay. The opposite of what you typically would think. Because the moment you kick into, I work with my clients at their pace, I'm not going to push you to do something you don't want to do. I just want to help you make the best decision for you. The moment you do that, and then you say, so would afternoon or an evening be better for us to get together and talk more about that? They don't feel the pressure and they go, oh yeah, let's get together. Then you go over and you meet with them. And it's amazing how when you go meet with them, how all of a sudden they're like, well, yeah, we do actually want to get going on getting our home sold. And the sooner we can get it on the market, the better. See, it's just counterintuitive that the moment, that's why I say, start off as the hunter. Be the guy that's there to get the food for today. But the moment you feel the resistance, hey, I work with my clients at their pace. I'm not going to push you to do something you don't want to do. I just want to help. And which, by the way, that's true for me. Like, I don't want to push somebody to do something they don't want to do. But it's amazing how when I say, well, which time would be better for us to get together, though, an afternoon or an evening? And sometimes they'll go, well, but we're not ready yet. I understand. I work with my clients at their pace. I just want to meet so that we can make a plan. And then, like I said, you get out there on the appointment and all of a sudden their plan changes and they're ready to go. Okay. All right. So that's the idea of this. Now, with that, I'm going to walk you through why this is and why that works. Okay. Now, so this next piece, I'm going to get into some more detail of like, let me explain why this whole thing works and why it is like it is. Okay. And it's tied to, so let me give you an example of what I mean. So for you guys that were here on Thursday, you heard me tell the story, and I briefly mentioned it today for the rest of you guys, is I went from making the 50 contacts a day to set one new appointment. Well, what I found is when my focus went on setting appointments versus contacts, I didn't need to make as many contacts to set an appointment, meaning I was making 50 contacts every single day, but not getting very many appointments. As soon as I said, I'm going to set one new appointment every day, all of a sudden I was getting appointments and I was only having to talk to about 25 people in order to set an appointment. And it's because of that focus of instead of making contacts. And so I changed my approach. All right. Now, with that in mind, what happened then is I mentioned that as soon as I started setting one new appointment every day, my income doubled the next year and I prospected half as much as I had been. Well, the next year after that, my income doubled again. And all I was still doing was setting one new appointment a day. Well, I ran into a guy, this was before all this, but I had moved into a house. I had a home built. My uncle helped me. He was a builder. He built a house for me. And I'm out walking in the neighborhood one day. I might have been walking the dog. I don't know what I was doing, but I'm out in the neighborhood and I run into this guy that I had gone to high school with. His name was Darren. And I saw him and I said, Darren, what are you doing? And he was like, oh, I just live right over here. What are you doing? And I'm like, I just live over here. Like it was a couple streets away from each other. And we just got talking. Well, we had been acquaintances, I would say, more in high school. We knew each other. We didn't like hang out that often. But now, because we were neighbors, we started seeing each other more often and talking and all that kind of stuff. Well, he watched as I went from barely making it in real estate to now being one of the top agents in the office. And one day I was talking to him and he said this. He goes, hey, so it seems like real estate's going really well for you. And I said, yeah, really good. And he's like, so when are you going to move? And I said, I'm not moving. Now, part of here's why. And I'm going to teach you guys this in the SOI class. But part of it is I was doing what I'll teach you in the SOI class. And most of the business that I was getting was coming from that. So let me explain to you why that was. So I lived out on 5600 West. So imagine this is 5600 West here. This is 6200 South. And I lived in this neighborhood that was right here. Okay. And I was getting a ton of business from the people here because those homes were all like starter homes. And so the people who had bought them were either getting new jobs, getting promotions, whatever. After a few years, they were all starting to move out of there. Well, I had done what I'm going to teach you guys in this SOI class. And I started to do that with this group of people. Well, what started to happen is they were calling me saying, hey, Russ, we got this job transfer, or we got a new job. We want a bigger house. We want a better house, whatever. And then I would help them sell their house. So this day that I'm talking to Darren and he says, so when are you going to move? And I was like, I'm never moving. Like I'm getting a ton of business out of the people who live in this area. So I'm never moving. Now, here's what happened though. The reason I drove this like I did is the office that I worked at. So picture this is Redwood Road right here. Okay. So this is Redwood Road. And then down here is 7800 South. So the office that I worked at was right on the other side of 7800 South in this little building here. In fact, if you're familiar with it at all, there's a Dairy Queen right there.
And I would have gotten so fat.
Maybe you did.
Well, that was a problem.
Okay, so anyway, there's a Dairy Queen right there, and then it's the next building down, which is the building actually is for sale right now. I think it's either for sale or lease. But what would happen was this. I would leave my house and I would drive down here, and then Bangerter Highway's right here. And as I would drive down here, I would get stuck in kind of what I would consider rush hour traffic. Now, when I tell this story, the California agents, they always laugh because they're like, you guys don't even know what traffic is, but which is not true, by the way. You lived down there for a while. Like I-15 can be as bad, don't you think?
Yeah, but like I feel like I just like maybe like the difference between Utah and California traffic is like Utah like has a reason to have traffic. And like California.
That's true.
That's a good.
That is a good point. That is true. And they don't know how to drive in the rain either. It rains and they're done. Anyway. So here's what happened though. So now remember, and now all of this is going to make sense in a second for you guys and of why I'm telling you all this. And it's going to help you in your prospect. But Darren had said to me, so when are you going to move? And I said, I'm never going to move. Yet, within a week or two of that, I'm driving along here to go to the office and I get stuck here in this traffic. And I'm sitting there in the traffic and all of a sudden I have this thought pop into my head. Well, if I ever do move, it will be east of Bangerter Highway. I will live east of Bangerter because as soon as I would get past here, I could go down to Redwood Road, I could get to my office, or I would turn and go, even if I went on Bangerter and went to 78th was fine, or I could turn and go down one of these other roads here. That was it. So as I just had this thought, well, if I ever do move, it will be east of Bangerter Highway. Now, what I have learned since then is, and what we're going to talk about now is this. In the buying or selling cycle, so whether a person is buying or selling, doesn't matter, they're going to go through this process. The first thing that's going to happen is they go through what we call the percolation stage. So when you hear the word percolate, what do you think of?
Coffee maker,
Okay, why? Why do you think of coffee or a coffee maker?
use a percolator.
Okay, but what is it doing? If coffee's percolating, what is it doing?
Get the coffee ready.
Okay, good. Okay, it's brewing. What does that mean?
Brewing.
What does that mean?
Converting water into coffee.
And how's it doing that?
Starting to bubble a little.
Okay, good. Thank you, Nathan. So, okay, so think of it that way. So when I say percolate, it's that same concept, okay? The percolation phase, when somebody is in the percolation phase of the buying or selling process. So remember, that's what we're talking here about. This whole thing is what we would call the buyer / seller cycle, okay? This is the buyer seller cycle. But the first phase, the first thing that happens is percolation. Now, I didn't realize it at the time that this happened, but I understand it now. The moment he said to me, when do you plan on moving? Now, he said, so real estate seems to be going good. So when are you going to move? And I said, I'm not moving. Now, then within a week or two, I'm sitting there in the stoplight on Bangerter and 6200 South, and I have this thought of, well, if I ever do move, it will be east of Bangerter Highway. Okay. Now, what happened is I started in this percolation process. Okay, I started to percolate. And percolate means it's happening under the surface. Meaning, if you were an agent and you showed up and knocked on my door, so this is where I'm starting to answer your question a little bit, Aubrey. If you were an agent and I wasn't an agent and you had knocked on my door after that and you said, hey, so when do you plan on moving? I would have still said never. But here's the interesting thing. Within 1 year of when Darren asked me, when are you going to move? I moved. I moved within a year. And what I learned from that process is this, what I'm going to share with you now. And then I've watched it now happen with clients and everybody goes through this. Okay. But so here's the next thing that happened. So I have that thought, I continue on, I go to the office, I don't think about it again. Well, then what happens is not long after that, I'm driving to work one day and I drive past here. So I'm now east of Bangerter Highway. And I get here to, this is 3200 West. And I notice as I drive past here, and this is 2700 West, I notice this farm that's now being turned into houses. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. I never noticed that before. So I turn and come down here. And then I just drove through, they had one street in here. And I drove through and noticed they had this park right here. And I was like, huh, that's kind of cool. This looks like a nice neighborhood. And then I drove out and I went back to work and I went to work.
Hey,
Now,
come here.
oh, hold on. That's somebody unmuted. Didn't realize they were unmuted there. Okay, so I didn't realize it at the time, but what's going on is that was still percolation. Just the fact that I drove through there was percolation. So then here's what happens next. I'm driving, the next time I'm in the car with my wife and we drive by here, I say to her, hey, did you notice they're building new houses right there? And she says, oh, no, I never noticed it. Oh, yeah, you got to check it out. So I turn and I drive down and we drive through to show her the neighborhood. Then we went wherever we were going. That's still percolation. Can you, are you getting the point of what percolation looks like? Percolation is just thinking about it. So in today's world, jumping on the internet and doing a search for properties that they then sign up for or whatever, they're percolating is what's going on. That's what percolation is, okay? So they're just thinking about it. Now, then what happens is for a few months or weeks, I don't know how long it was, I would drive by here and I would drive on my way to work or home, one or the other, I would just drive through there and I'm watching them build these houses. Well, pretty soon, all of a sudden, one of them's a model home. So I'm driving by the one day with my wife and I say, hey, did you notice they now have a model home in there? And she says, no, I didn't notice. Oh, well, look, I'll show you. I drive through and I go, should we just go inside and take a look? And she says, yeah, let's do it. So we park, I get out of the car, walk in, and as we walk into the agent says, welcome. And guess what's the first thing that I say to the agent, which is what everybody says when they go to an open house or any model home? What do they say?
I'm an agent.
Well, yeah, that is what I said. But if you're not an agent, what do they say? What do you say? If you were going to look at new cars and you walk in, do you walk in and go, oh, I'm buying a car today?
You see me running at.
Well, you what?
How much is
Okay. Yes, typically we walk in and just kind of go, I'm just curious.
I'm just looking.
Oh, yeah.
Just looking. You know, any store you walk into, can I help you? What do you say? Just looking. So that's what we said. Actually, I said I'm an agent, but I walked in and said, I'm an agent. Here's my card. And here's what I said. I just like to be familiar with the inventory. And so I want to know what's out there. So what are your prices and stuff? So you're right. I think I'm like, what's the prices? So she tells me the prices and all that. My wife and I walk through the house. Now, by the way, let me pause for a minute. Why is it when we walk into a department store, or in this case, I walked into a model home, why do we say, I'm just looking?
Fear of being sold.
Because what?
Fear of being sold.
That's right. Is nobody wants to be sold. So you can add this to your notes. People like to buy. Now, keep in mind, remember when I say buy, this includes sellers. They're buying your services. People like to buy. Nobody likes to be sold. Nobody wants to be sold, but we all like to buy. People like to buy. Nobody wants to be sold. Okay. So the reason they walk in and say that is they don't want you to try to sell them. So that's what I did. My wife and I walked through and my wife's like, I actually really like this house a lot. And I'm like, I actually do too. So we go down and I say to the agent, so do you have any cul-de-sacs in the neighborhood? And she says, well, yeah, we've got this one over here. And so this is the park. There's a cul-de-sac like right here. She's like, yeah, there's a lot right here in this cul-de-sac that's available. Oh, okay. And we leave. Now, what I didn't know then, but I do know now, is I had moved out of percolation into the next phase. The next phase is what we call information gathering. The next phase in the process is what we call information gathering. In information gathering, guess what we talked about percolating. Percolating is they're just thinking about it. It's under the surface. They don't really even realize they're doing it. What do you think information gathering is? It's a highly technical term. What do you think they're doing during information gathering? I'm joking when I say it's highly technical. This is what they're doing. Yeah. Well, they're gathering information. They're just gathering, like, yeah, I couldn't think of a better term, but so they're starting to gather information. When somebody's in the information gathering phase, that may be when they jump on the internet too. That may be that they go walk into an open house. It may be that they go to the model home. They may call you on the phone and ask a question. Information gathering is they're now gathering information. Okay, now, I still didn't realize it. And here's the other thing to keep in mind. So part of what I want you to see and understand with this. When people are in the percolation phase, or even the early stages of information gathering, they don't realize they're going to be doing something. Remember I said to you, my friend asked me, Darren asked me, when are you gonna move? I'm never moving. Within a year, I moved. Okay? But even 6 months into it, if you would have knocked on my door and said, so I'm a real estate agent, have you thought about selling your house? Guess what I would have said? No, we're not moving. We're never gonna move. We're staying here. Even though I had started doing information gathering. So in these phases, especially early on here, the later part of this, they might recognize it. But early on, even after I walked into that model home, I didn't realize we're going to be selling our house and buying a new one. Okay, I want to make sure you guys are understanding where we're going with this. Is just because someone is in, especially this phase, when they're in this phase, which Aubrey left, but this is where I was trying to get to him for him is when they're in this phase, they'll tell you they're not doing anything. Even early on in here, they're going to tell you they're not doing anything. But what happened is we continued to go back there and ask more questions and find out a little bit more. Pretty soon we put money down on a lot to buy. And a few months later, they had the house built and we moved in. Like, so the last piece of this is what we call the active phase. In the active phase is where they are actively looking to buy or sell. Okay. During the active phase, so here's what I'm saying, in case you haven't put the pieces together. When we prospect, we're looking for the now business. We're looking for the people who are in this phase. That's who we're trying to get. But here's the challenge with that. And when I say the challenge, this isn't necessarily a bad thing. Challenge could be a good thing. But the challenge with you setting an appointment with somebody in the active phase. In fact, let me even say it this way. Sometimes I'll take a poll, but I'm not going to today. Sometimes I'll take a poll and have you guys vote on which one of these is the hardest to set an appointment with. Percolation, information gathering, or active. And where do you think most people say that the hardest to set an appointment is? Most will say percolation, but it actually is active. Why? Why would this be the hardest one? Why would this, now stop and think about it. We're prospecting, especially for sale by owners and expireds. We're prospecting, looking for the now people. Those are the now people. Why are they the hardest ones to set an appointment with?
They have their mind made.
Why? You're right.
Because they gathered all this information and planned it out. And
That's right.
down the roadmap.
Because they've been through all of this, part of this stuff along here is figuring out who they're going to work with. So I'm not saying you can't get an appointment here. You can. Just know that they're the hardest ones, so here's what I'm saying to tie it back to this. You got to be really good at this, the connect, and really good at the create value to get the appointments with the people in the active phase. You got to work on your skill set of connecting and creating value and then closing in order to set an appointment with those people, because they've made decisions already along the way. This is the hardest group to set an appointment with. And just kind of so you know, this group, this window is typically 45 days. This whole entire thing here is somewhere between 6 and 9 months. And I would say since the internet, it's maybe more like 12 to 18 now months for people to go through this whole process is what it's going to take. So now here's the thing. What I'm wanting you to take out of this is two things. One is we want to set the appointments today. We want to get those now people, which is the people who are here. But now you see why your skill set has to be so good is because they've already made decisions along the way of who they want to work with or deal with along the way. And so your skill set's got to get really good. And let me say this another way. You're going to have to ask, make sure you hear this. You're going to have to ask at least 3 to 5 times these things to get an appointment. with the people in this phase, you're gonna have to ask them 3 to 5 times on the same phone call in order to get an appointment with them. So you gotta get really good at doing that. Make sense?
Yeah,
Questions?
I'm just curious, like, after you ask, how do you recover? Cause they're like, oh, no, we're not like,
Oh, great question. Perfect. So yeah, so once I've been down here and I've said, so let's do it. So what do you want to be? For sale by owner, expired,
I'll
internet
be
lead?
it
I
for
don't-
somebody.
Okay, for sale by owner. So let's assume, just for the sake of time, we've done some of this. And now I'm saying to you, so our afternoons or evenings better that we could get together and talk more about what I do to get a home sold.
I'm still a little unsure.
So, okay, so now let me pause for a minute. As soon as he says that, if we go back to this, what did he just tell me? Where did he tell me I have not? No, I'm probably well, it could be connected,
Create value.
but more than likely, he doesn't see the value of meeting with.
I see, so now you know.
So now what I want to do though is I'm typically going to come back up to here and ask another question that then is a way for me to create value. Okay, so let's do that. So, okay, so our afternoons or evenings better?
I'm still a little unsure.
You're still a little unsure, but you did say that getting your home sold is a priority.
Yes, sir.
And that you said that if you're gonna get the home sold, that you need to do it within the next couple of months in order for you to get into the new house.
Mhm, mhm.
Okay, so have you considered though, how when somebody gives you an offer, have you considered how you're gonna use points as a way to leverage that offer?
That's a good question. No, I haven't.
Okay, well, so that's the very reason we need to get together. So what works better, afternoons or evenings?
Let's do afternoon.
Okay, so all I'm gonna do then is loop up here, ask a question or two. So here, in fact, let me even do it this way for you guys. Think of it this way as, think of it as like this figure 8. And right here is where you're asking for the appointment. So what you want to do is as soon as I ask for the appointment, if they say no, I'm gonna ask 3 or 4 questions, then I'm gonna close them. If they say no, I'm gonna ask 3 or 4 more questions, close again. I'm just gonna consistently just keep going like this, asking questions, asking for an appointment, ask more questions, but asking the questions, then trying to create value along the way. That answer?
Yeah, that's.
Okay. All right. We good with any other questions? You were gone for the part that
I had a client that had an appointment, you know.
I understand. Okay. All right, so now, do you want to see how we can apply some of this stuff? So actually, first, let me do this. First thing I want to show you guys is I told you I was going to show you this survey that NAR does. So let me explain that to you real quick. And then from there, we're going to jump into, I'm going to give you like how would I go out and approach expireds for sale by owners, and some of that real quick, okay? So let me get this turned on. This pulled up. Okay, so what you are looking at here. This out of the way. You guys see it? Okay, we get that right, Justin. Okay. Now, let me explain what we're looking at. So every year, NAR does a survey of home buyers and sellers. And so I'm going to show you a few of the charts that come from that. On this survey that they do of the home buyers and sellers, what happens is in July of every year, NAR sends out this survey to people who have bought or sold a house. Then they work from July until October to get the data. From October then to November, they then compile it. And then at the end of November, they release it. So what you're looking at here is the 2022 survey. Let me hide this. Okay, so, or sorry, you're looking at the 2021. The 2022 one will come out this month. So the end of this month, I'll go buy the new one and we'll have the new one. But what I'll tell you is essentially they don't change. When you look at this, this is the method that people use to find their real estate agent to help them sell their house. So when you look at that, what stands out to you?
a reference. How most businesses gain from people referred.
Yeah, so if there was ever a question to you of working a sphere of influence, this should answer it right there. Is because 39% of the time, the way that a seller is going to choose who they're going to use to help them sell their home is either referred by or is a friend, neighbor, or relative, or 29% used the agent previously. So if you add those together, you're at what, 60? No, yeah. 68%. So over 2/3 of the time, they're doing it that way, okay? What about on the buyer side? Yeah, if you look at that, it is 60% comes from either referred by as a friend, neighbor, or relative, or used the agent previously. Okay, so the only reason I show you that is just to make sure you understand. You got to be calling people you know. Tap into neighbors, friends, all of that kind of stuff, because that's the best place to be getting business. So if you're not doing it, start doing it. And in the SOI class, we'll talk more about that. All right, here's the next one that I want to show you though. Now, one of the things that you will hear people say is that somewhere between 80 and 88% of all for sale by owners end up listing their house for sale. There's actually no data to back that up. You'll hear people say that all the time. There is zero data to back it up. This is the closest thing we have. And so what you're looking at here is this line at the top this is the percentage of people who used an agent to sell their house. This line here is the people who sold their house for sale by owner. And then this one is other. And I don't know what other is, but when you look at that, when you just looking at that chart, what do you learn from it? What does it tell you?
People are using agents more now than they did in the 80s and the 90s.
Yeah, which is interesting because I remember back in like 2003, back in this time frame, I remember people saying, oh, with the internet, like travel agents are going to go away and real estate agents will go away. But if you look at that, what's happened since is exactly what you said. More people have used agents and less have sold their home for sale by owner.
It's actually an all-time vote.
Yeah.
I also know another trend that's on there. It's like 2007, 2008. You can see the trend starts to dramatically decrease, especially in times of crisis where people aren't familiar with the market and aren't sure what's happening. They don't really know what buyers are looking to do. So it's harder to sell at that point. And of course, it goes up at that point too. So
Yeah, it is interesting, like you said, right after the crash that we had back here is where all of a sudden less and less people used or tried to sell it for sale by owner and went more with an agent. And that's continued slightly to happen. So it'll be interesting to see what 2022 shows when we get this, but it's going to be about the same. So part of why I show you this is I want you guys to see there still are 7 out of every 100 homes that sell are done for sale by owner. And I'm not showing you that to try to make it look bad by any means. I just want you to see the truth is they do get their homes sold. But here's the key. This chart here shows you how much they're able to sell their house for. And remember, I told you I was going to show you a chart that will help you to go in with confidence in talking to a for sale by owner of I can help you get more money. This is it. Because so notice here the median selling price. So let me just make sure that I explain this. Well, in fact, let me ask you guys, what is the difference between average or median? So if notice it doesn't say average sales price, it says median. What's the difference?
Average is like all the numbers out of the median. It's like more like the middle number.
Perfect. That's exactly right. So think of it that way. If I said, let's say that Justin over here made $10 million last year, and the rest, you guys all made 250, between $200,000 and $300,000 in the year, and I made 50. If we average that out, he made 10 million. It's going to still look like we each made over $1 million a year. That's what average would, that's why average can be skewed, is if there's an outlier like that, it's going to mess it up. Because if we said our average income was $1.5 million a year between all of us, like that's not really accurate, right? I mean, it's true, That is the average, but is that really kind of like would people all look at us, oh, you guys all made $1 million last year, but we didn't. Versus if you said, let's take the median, it gets rid of him, gets rid of me, and then just takes the middle and said, okay, our median income here was 250,000. That's more realistic. Does that make sense? That's why we use median here, is we want to get rid of the outliers. So if you look at that, the median sales price, now this is for the whole country. This is not Utah, okay? This is the whole country. The median sales price was 314,500 for all sellers. All for sale by owners, their median sales price is 260,000. If they knew the buyer, their median sales price was 227, which that makes sense. If you were selling the house to somebody you knew, you're going to give them a better deal. So it makes sense that that would be less. If they didn't know the buyer, it was 273,000. So this really, I would say, is the number we want to be looking at, because we don't want to take into account people who sold their house to their family member. Yeah. Now, look at the agent assisted though, is 318,000. So approximately, what is the percentage difference between this and this? I mean, just if you said this is 30,000 of 300, it's 10%, right?
Yeah, it's like
So you're somewhere around 12, 13, 14%. Okay. Now, so let me come back again. Why does it for sale by owner sell it by owner?
oh, because they want to say nothing.
But according to this, what happens? They actually look, so they're trying to save 6%, but in actuality, they end up losing an additional 6%. Can you see that? See, the reason I show you this is because I want you, as you're talking to for sale by owners, to be able to with confidence say, if you'll use me as an agent, I'm going to be able to net you more money. And there's the proof right there. We net them on average or median more money than if they did it by themselves. Now, why would that be? Well, stop and think about it. And I started down this road, but then I stopped. Why would somebody go buy a for sale by owner without an agent? Because it doesn't cost them anything to use an agent. So why would somebody go to a for sale by owner without an agent?
We don't even get it cheap,
That's right. And how much cheaper do they want to get for
10 to 15%.
it? Yeah, typically their thinking is, well, you're not using an agent, therefore you can afford to take less on the price, the sales price of your house. That's what we're seeing here. Okay. All right, makes sense? Any questions on that? Okay, let's do the last thing I wanted to cover with you guys then. So let me get the screen back up here. Okay, last thing we're gonna cover, then we'll be done. So if I wanted to work now, so for me, that's kind of the for sale by owner piece that I want to make sure you guys understood is don't have in your mind, because sometimes actually even agents, when we look at the commissions that we can earn, the amount of money we can get paid, sometimes as agents, we feel like, well, I could do it for cheaper because I don't need, you know, like they look at that and go, I'm gonna get paid $20,000. Well, I'm gonna get $20,000. I don't need to charge them. I can do it for 5 or 4. And I'm telling you, don't do that because you're worth more than that. Okay. All right. Now, so let's talk about expireds. And I'm going to show you, originally the way I worked expired listings was I was just on the phone calling. And then one day I had this thought of like, I want to be like different. I want to stand out, and you might think of it as create value, whatever, but I want to stand out and be different from everybody else. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to print off all the expires for Salt Lake County, and then I'm going to jump in my car and go drive around, which I'm not recommending that, by the way. But I jumped in the car and I went and drove around and knock on these doors. And I had printed off the ones that had expired the day before for the day of. So I print them all off. I jumped in the car and I drove from the Avenues to Harriman and from Draper to Magna. Like I covered the whole valley. Took me the entire day. There was, I think, if I remember right, there was 10 or 11, something like that, properties. that I printed off. Took me almost the entire day. Guess how many people I talked to? One. Only one person was home when I did that. So I spent the whole day driving around, didn't talk to anybody but one person. And that one person said, oh, we actually just signed the papers with our agent to relist it. So I was like, well, that was a waste. So I'm not recommending you do that, but this I am recommending that you do is identify an area. I think my purpose in life is to get rid of markers that don't work. All right, so what I do want you to do is identify an area. Now, it can either be close to your house, it could be close to the office, or it could be just an area you want to get listings in, okay? Then what you want to do is say, okay, I'm going to find all the homes within that area that expired in the last year. Now, sometimes people will ask me, well, how big of an area should I print this as? Well, here's the answer for that. I don't know. And what I mean by that is just pick an area. It doesn't matter how big or small you initially begin with. Here's what I'll tell you I learned. All of Salt Lake County is too big. So you don't want it to be that big. And you probably don't even want it to be half of that. You probably want it even smaller than that. But what I'm telling you is as I go through this, and as you start to do it, you'll figure out for you if it's too big or too small. And I'll tell you how to figure it out. So just pick an area. Maybe start with a city, okay? And just say, okay, I'm going to pull all, or a zip code. You can do that too, a zip code. But I'm going to pull all the expireds in the last year in this area. Okay. Once you do that, then you're going to go. So when you go on to the MLS, you're going to go in and do a search. Let's just say zip code. Okay. So I'm going to put in the zip code. I'm going to do on the MLS expireds. And then on the expiration date, I'm going to put from November 1st of 2021 to November 1st, or I guess October 31st of 2022, and find all the expireds. Then what you want to do is on those expireds, click on the history and look to make sure that the last thing that it shows is expired. Because if the last thing it shows is sold, that means they relisted and they sold. Or if the last thing on there is active, that means they've already relisted, it's back on the market. So as long as the last thing that it's showing is expired, you're going to keep that property. Okay. Now all of it identified, however many there are for that area. Okay. So I identify how many properties there are. Then what you're going to do is go get in your car, drive out to the area, and then you're going to go knock on the door of this house. So I'm going to go knock on this door. Now, as I said to you, my experience was, now this may be a little different today because maybe I know there's still a lot of people working from home since COVID hit. There's still a lot of people that just work out of their house. So you may get more people answering the door than what I did when I was doing this. But what I found is I would go knock on this door and then they weren't home. So then what you do, so you're not wasting your time, is you're going to knock on 3 to 5 doors of their next door neighbors. Then you cross the street and you're going to knock on 6 to 10 of those doors, cross the street and do the 3 to 5 here. Okay. Now, let me show you what you're going to do though. So what I'm going to do is I go and I knock on this door. Well, do you want me to do, what do I do if they answer the door first?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to go knock on this door. So Shane, you've been quiet. Can I pick on you? Will you be the expired? So I'm going to come knock on your door. Now, here you've got one of 2 ways you can do this, and I don't care which way, you decide which one you like better and do it. You can either knock on the door and just be straight out. Hey, I noticed your home, that you had your home for sale 4 months ago and it expired, came off the market, and I was just coming by to see if you're still interested in selling. So that's one approach. You could just do that. Okay. The other approach is you could knock on the door and just say, hey, my name's Russ. I'm with Century 21. We listed a home over on Birch and Pine, just find a close by Century 21 listing and just say, just wondering who you know that would want to move into the area. If they're still thinking about it, a lot of times they'll go, well, if I knew somebody that wanted to move into the area, I would sell my house. And then you can go, oh, really? Now, whatever. So either way, So either just knock on the door and say. Your home came up as an expired listing 4 months ago. I just wanted to see if you're still interested in selling. If you had, now look, all I'm gonna do is jump into this. If you had sold, where were you gonna go?
Oh, are we on now?
Yeah.
Probably Draper.
Oh, so you were gonna move from Draper to here? Oh, really? That's awesome. So notice what I did. Repeat and affirm. I just realized I spelled repeat really bad. Sorry. If you can't, here's what I always say though, if you can't spell a word more than one way, you're not very creative. So that's supposed to say repeat, and I just barely realized that it's not even close. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, it was abbreviation. That's what it was. My excuse is when I'm talking and writing at the same time, that gets messed up. But anyway, yeah. And then I looked at it. Here's the funny thing is how many times have I pointed to it? And anyway, notice that I'm repeating and affirming. Oh, so you were going to move to Draper. That's awesome. What was taking you to Draper? And then bam, I go to another question.
Family.
Oh, it's just wanted to be closer to your family. Oh, well, good for you. So it looks like your house obviously didn't sell. Why do you think your home didn't sell?
I don't know, we just didn't have a lot of people coming to look at it.
Didn't have a lot of people coming? And did you ever ask your agent why? Now, notice all I'm doing is this, asking questions, repeat and affirm, asking questions, repeat and affirm.
Yeah, they just, it seemed like you couldn't find very many people that wanted to look at it.
He just said there weren't many people to look at it?
Yeah.
Really? Now, notice what I just did there. My affirm on this one was not, oh, that's great. Instead, I'm like, really? Now, what's the message I'm trying to send by doing that? Really?
Kind of like, how dare you, like.
Yeah. Like like, wow, I'm trying to send the message of like, that's not probably true, kind of, so I'm really, that's what he said?
Yeah.
Huh. So what do you think he should have done to get your home sold?
I'm not an expert.
You're not an expert, okay, but if you could get your home sold still, would you want to?
Yeah, I mean, it's for the right price. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, let's do this then. So as soon as he says that, now I'm like, okay, now I'm gonna close. So, well, great. Well, when would be a good time that you and I could get together and talk more about that?
Tomorrow would be good.
Tomorrow? Okay, great. So he was kind of easy there, but that's how I'm gonna handle this, okay? Is I'm just gonna go knock on the door and try to connect, create value, and then close. Now, what if he's not home though? So now let's go through that. Because now I said go to 3 to 5 doors this way. So now watch what I'm gonna do here. So now Isaac's the next door neighbor. So I go knock on the door.
So,
Hey,
so I go.
hey, so my name's Russ. I'm with Century 21. I'm actually not here to talk to you about your house at all. And what happens when I say that to the neighbor? I'm not here to talk to you about your house. Yeah, his guard goes, oh, okay, well, what's up? What can I do for you? So I say, I'm actually was trying to get a hold of your next door neighbor because I noticed their home had been on the market and it came off like 4 months ago. Do you know if they're still wanting to sell?
We don't talk very much. I just know that they were trying to sell their home. I had a lot of open houses and stuff, but it just didn't get sold.
So they were trying to, they had a bunch of open houses, but just didn't get it. Okay, so do you have any idea if they still want to sell?
I'm guessing they do. I mean, they try to sell, but I mean, I don't talk to them very much.
You don't talk to them very much. Okay, cool. Well, how about you? Have you thought about selling your house at all? So
No.
now notice all of a sudden, so what I'm doing in this scenario, here's what I found, guys, with this. When I knock on his door and he's not home and I go to the neighbor. And I started by saying, I'm not here to talk to you about you selling your house. I'm actually I was trying to get a hold of your next door neighbor, but they weren't home. The other thing I will say is, do you know when the best time to catch them is at home? Evenings. Okay. A lot of times they'll now tell you when to capture them at home too. So that now when I want to come back, or if I want to come back to him, I will hopefully have an idea when he's going to be home. Okay. But notice I started by, do you know if they were thinking of selling? Do you know why it didn't sell? Do you know where they were going to go? A lot of times, here's what I found. When I knock on this door and I talk to Shane, he's going to lie to me. He's going to tell me, yeah, we're not interested. We don't want to sell, just to get me to leave. But when I'm at the neighbor, a lot of times the neighbors, here's what I found. Depending on the neighbor, if they really don't like the person or they don't have a very good relationship, then they may be like, well, in fact, actually, let me give you an example of one I did. This was just off of a road, off of Creek Road up here. That I went and knocked on the door. I had gone to the house probably 4 or 5 times. And every time I went, I would stick one of my business cards in the door of this house. that just said, I may be interested in buying your home or something. I can't remember exactly what I said, something like that, and put it in the door. Well, then every time I would go back, the card was still in the door. So I was like, I don't even know if anybody lives here, but yet there was cars in the drive, like it looked enough like people were living there. So anyway, I get done the one day and I just go, I'm gonna walk across the street and talk to the neighbor. So I go over and knock on the neighbor's door. And she answers the door and I, hey, my name's Russ. I'm not here to talk to you. Now, I'm in a suit at this time too. So I knock on the door. I said, I'm not here to talk to you. I was actually trying to get a hold of your neighbor. And she's like, why? What did he do? And I think she was thinking like I was the FBI or something because I was in the suit. But she's like, why? What did he do? And I was like, oh, nothing. I'm actually with Century 21 and I was wanting to get a hold of him to find out if he's interested in selling his house. And she's like, oh, he's weird. And I was like, what do you mean? She's like, he won't even talk to us. We've lived here for 5 years and like you see him like take the guard. She's like, I'm not surprised he won't answer the door. He's in the house, I guarantee you. And like she starts just flooding me with all this information about the guy. See, that's what I found is you go talk to the neighbor. I can find out all ton of information about Shane that he might not tell me by going to the neighbor. But once I've found out whatever I can get, whether it's a ton of information or him saying, we don't really talk. Okay. Well, what then notice I go, well, what about you? Have you thought, we got a lot of people interested in moving into the area. Have you thought about selling your house?
It crossed our minds a couple years ago, but we feel like we missed the market.
You feel like you missed the chance to do it?
Yeah.
Okay, I can understand that. And if I were you, I would probably feel the exact same way. You know, the funny thing is though, so now notice what I just did. Empathy. If I were you, I'd feel the same way. But you know what the funny thing is actually we've got a bunch of people that are still putting their home on the market and selling it for a really good price. So if you could sell it, would you want to talk about doing that?
I mean, if we got like a qualified buyer and if we weren't wasting time, then yeah.
Okay, well, so yeah, that'd be great. When would be a good time we could get together and talk more about it? So now notice, I'm just gonna go right into closing, okay? But let's say that he wasn't interested, and so we just chit chatted and whatever. Okay, well, hey, I appreciate you talking to me. I'll try back to get him in the evening when he might be home. Talk to you later. Then I go to the next door neighbor. Hi, my name's Russ. I'm with Century 21. I'm actually not here to talk to you about getting your home sold. Your neighbor 2 doors down, they have their home for sale. And we've got buyers who are still interested in this area. Do you know if they're still thinking about selling?
No, I'm not sure right now.
You're not sure. Okay. Do you know if they had sold where they were going? Notice, I'm just gonna ask all these I'm just gonna ask a bunch of nosy questions to find out. What I'm trying to find out from the neighbors is it worth going back and talking to this guy? Let's say that Jackson tells me, yeah, no, when COVID hit, he lost his job and now he's got this really good job and he's happy and they're not planning on moving. Then I might go, okay, I may or may not want to. Then I go across the street, I knock on the doors and I'm doing this same thing on hey, I'm just trying to get a hold of your neighbor. Do you know how to best get a hold of them, when I could get a hold of them, and if they're thinking of selling or if they want to sell? Oh, well, since I got you, have you thought about selling your house? Like it kind of creates a little bit of a connection just by saying, I'm not here to talk to you about your house. I want to find out about if your neighbor, if they're still wanting to sell, because we got people that want to buy in this area. Does that make sense? So I'm going to do that for 3 to 5, 6 to 10, 3 to 5. Then I can decide either I'm going to keep trying to, at a minimum, the neighbors are going to tell me when's the best time to catch them at home. Now I know when to come back, so I'm not wasting my time to get a hold of him. And then I'm going to do that for every one of these. Now, once you've gone through and hit all those, you're still every day going to be looking at, because you may take you longer than a day to hit all of these expires. But then I'm going to every day on the MLS be looking for any new properties that come up here. Okay. We've got an agent in this office by the name of Brian Noel. You know Brian, right? This is what he does. He'll make $600,000, $700,000, $800,000 this year. And he works his sphere of influence, which is why I showed you that chart. He works his sphere of influence, and then he's identified an area that he goes and door knocks, expires. Those are his 2 sources. So you should have 2 or 3 sources, one of them being your SOI, and then pick 1 or 2 others, and then just go at it and keep after doing it. Okay. All right. Where are we at?
47. 47.
Oh, okay.
41.
Well, let's wrap up then. All right, any other questions? Thoughts? Anybody from Zoom? Questions? All right. Well, thanks for being here. So Thursday's class we're going to be doing is activities management. So I'm going to actually give you a formula to know if what you're doing, if where you're spending your time is being effective in real estate or not. Because believe it or not, there are a lot of people who show up and are here at the office, but they're not productive. And so I'm going to give you a formula on Thursday to know, am I being productive? When you'll want to use this is one is to get your business started and two is to get to the next level. If you're ever feeling like, okay, I want to get my business to the next level, you want to use this formula that I'm going to give to you on Thursday. So, okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, guys. See you later. And gals, I guess guys in person, mostly gals on the phone or on Zoom.